There is a lie hidden inside every productivity system ever sold, every single one. And that lie is why you keep buying them. You keep buying because they almost work. They make you feel organized, but they do not make you whole. I know the lie, and when I tell you, you will want to argue with me. My nephew mailed me a book last month. He wrote on the inside cover, "Uncle Ray, this finally cracked it for me." The subtitle promised the last system you'll ever need. So I read it, all 247 pages. That book is not wrong. Almost none of it is wrong. But it is missing something so fundamental that I wonder if the author has ever built anything with his hands. I spent 44 years in a fire station in Worcester, Massachusetts. Not as a firefighter, I was the mechanic. While they ran into burning buildings, I made sure the trucks would start when they came back out. And in that time, I watched roughly 800 men and women try to solve the exact same puzzle you're trying to solve right now. How to matter. How to not become invisible. How to stop feeling like you're treading water while everyone else swims past. I'm going to tell you something no system will ever tell you, because it cannot be diagrammed and it does not fit in a morning routine. But it is true, and you need it more than you need another color-coded calendar. So stay with me. That book talks about deep work, about protecting your attention, building rituals, eliminating distraction. And there is truth in that. I watched it constantly. The firefighters who were most obsessed with promotion were the ones who made careless mistakes. The ones who collected certifications like baseball cards were the ones who froze at their first real fire. I had a man named Victor Ortiz in 1987 who was so fixated on becoming lieutenant that he studied incident command theory until 2 a.m. every night, stopped working out, snapped at his wife, and by the time he made rank, he was sitting in my bay at 6 a.m., staring at the trucks he used to love, unable to remember why he wanted to lead anything. He got the promotion. He transferred to a desk job within 8 months. That is deep work in real life, not a chapter heading. But here is what that book does not tell you. Victor did not fail because he focused too hard. Victor failed because he was focusing on becoming someone he thought he should be, for a future he had not bothered to imagine with any honesty. The problem was never the attention. The problem was the target. And that distinction will change everything if you let it. You do not need to focus less. You need to focus on something that belongs to you. There's a world of difference between building something you care about and optimizing yourself into a shape that fits someone else's ladder. One of those will fill your chest. The other will leave you standing in a bay at 6 a.m., wondering where the feeling went. I saw both versions hundreds of times. The ones who thrived were not the ones who hacked their habits. They were the ones who figured out, sometimes slowly, sometimes with their hands shaken, what was actually theirs to build. And then they built it with stubborn, unglamorous patience. Focus is not the enemy. Focus borrowed from somewhere else is. The book also talks about energy management, about rhythms and recovery, strategic renewal. And again, not wrong, but I want to tell you what that looks like when it is not a graph. It looks like Joanne DeLuca in 1994, sitting on the back bumper of Engine 4, telling me her mother had called that morning that the cancer was back. Joanne was 34. She could not control whether her mother lived or died. She could not control that her brother had stopped answering his phone. She could not control the fact that she had used all her sick leave on her mother's first round of treatment. She could control whether she checked the pressure on the hoses, whether she tested the pumps, whether she showed up for the next shift and the one after that. And she did. Joanne's mother died in October. Joanne worked the day before and the day after, not because she was avoiding grief, because she knew, somewhere below the thinking, that her hands needed something honest to do. She is 64 now, retired. She makes stained glass in a garage in Auburn, Massachusetts. She still sends me a photograph every Christmas of whatever window she finished that year. But here is what I want you to understand. When Joanne sat on that bumper, she was not thinking about strategic renewal. She was a daughter trying to breathe, and her choice to keep working was not a technique, it was survival. It was the only thing she knew how to do. Theories about energy are useful, and I do not dismiss them. But when your life is breaking, you do not need a graph. You need someone to hand you a wrench and say, I know this is terrible. I know you cannot fix it, but this gauge needs reading. Can you do that? Just this one? That is what I said to Joanne. That is what I said to dozens of them, and most of them did it. Not because they understood recovery science, because someone asked them to do one small, honest thing. If you're reading this and your life feels unmanageable right now, I'm not going to give you a framework. I'm going to ask you what I asked them. Can you do one true thing today? Just one. We'll figure out the rest later. The book talks about purpose, about finding your why, your calling, your contribution. And again, not wrong, but I want to tell you what I actually observed across 800 firefighters and then across the decades after, because some of them came back to visit, and some of them I kept up with, and some of them sent their sons to the station. The people who ended up what I would call solid, and I use that word carefully because purpose is a slippery word, were not the ones who found some grand mission. They were the ones who learned to be useful. That's it. That's the secret that doesn't sell conferences. The ones who noticed what needed doing, who could walk into a room and see the problem before anyone named it, who could hand someone the right tool before they asked, who could sit with a rookie who was shaken after his first fatality and not say anything wise, just stay. I had a firefighter named Tom Brennan in 2001, nothing remarkable on paper, average valuations, no special commendations, but Tom had this quality where he was just available. You could tell because when something broke, he was already walking toward it. When someone was struggling, he was already beside them. And I remember thinking, that man is going to be fine. I didn't know what he would do or where he would go, but I knew he would be fine because he knew how to be needed. And he is fine. He runs a small farm in New Hampshire, raises chickens, fixes tractors for his neighbors. He's one of the most grounded people I've ever known. He didn't find purpose, he found usefulness. And usefulness is the foundation of everything else. You cannot love someone you are not willing to help. You cannot respect yourself if you are not contributing to something. You cannot sleep well if you spent the day waiting to be chosen. Every system in that book requires usefulness to implement, but nobody tells you that part because be useful is 2 words and it doesn't fill a weekend seminar. The book talks about your inner narrative, about the stories you tell yourself, limiting beliefs, imposter syndrome. All true, every word. But I want to tell you something more useful than knowing the names of these patterns. In 44 years, I learned that the heaviest weight people carry is not self-doubt, it is self-definition. And it is almost always the same definition, wearing different uniforms. The definition is, I'm the kind of person who. I'm the kind of person who fixes things.
I'm the kind of person who doesn't quit. I'm the kind of person who puts family first. The firefighters who were hardest to help were never the ones who were lost. Lost firefighters were easy. They came in. They said, "I don't know if this is for me," and we could work with that. The hard ones were the ones who walked in certain they had to be heroes, certain they could not show fear, certain that needing help meant they had failed before they started. Certainty about who you are is the most dangerous trap, and it doesn't even have a chapter in that book. You are probably carrying definitions right now that are crushing you, and those definitions feel like integrity because you've held them for so long that they have become the wall
of your house. But I have seen enough people walk out of houses to know that outside is almost always more air than you expected. If you are certain about who you are and it is making you miserable, question the certainty. That is not a concept from a book. That is practical advice from a man who watched people build themselves into corners and then saw them learn to build doors. Now here is the part that book cannot give you, and this is the part I need you to hear most. That book is 247 pages. It has sections, it has diagrams, the energy matrix, the purpose compass, the focus funnel. And those diagrams make it feel like life is a machine to be tuned. Adjust the variables correctly and you win. But that is not how it works. That is not how it has ever worked. Life is not a system. Life is a series of mornings. Ordinary, unremarkable mornings where nothing happens except everything. I watched my wife Eleanor drink the same tea for 41 years. Chamomile with honey, in the blue mug her mother gave her. She read the obituaries. She asked me what I was working on in the Bay. She left for the library at 9:15. And I am telling you right now that if I could have one more of those mornings, I would trade every insight I have ever gathered for it. Every matrix, every compass, every funnel. Give me one more morning with that woman reading about strangers' lives and asking about my work, because that is what life actually is. It is not the optimization. It is the ordinary moments you were too busy improving to inhabit. You are reading this right now, trying to figure out your life, and life is happening around you while you read. Your tea is cooling. Someone in the next room might need something you have not offered. The light through your window is doing something it will never do again in exactly that way. I am not telling you to stop learning. I am telling you to stop thinking that learning is a substitute for showing up. They are not the same thing. You can master every system in that book and still miss your entire life because you were too busy mastering it to actually live it. I want to tell you something about my daughter, Marie. For most of her 30s and 40s, she was estranged from us. Not dramatically, just gradually, then completely. Phone calls unanswered, visits declined, grandchildren we saw only in photographs. And I do not say that easily. It is the great wound of my life, worse than losing Eleanor, if I'm being honest, because with Eleanor, I had the peace of knowing she knew she was loved. With Marie, I had to watch my child choose a wall between us and wonder every day if I had built it. The thing that is relevant here, the thing I want you to hear, is that Marie knew everything. She could explain every reason for the distance. She could identify our patterns, her patterns, the generational cycles. She had read the books. She understood the psychology. She knew it all. And she stayed away. Because knowing is not forgiving. Understanding the architecture of hurt is not the same as walking through the door. And all the frameworks in the world cannot substitute for the terrifying moment when you have to actually pick up the phone and say, "I'm sorry," or "I miss you," or "I don't know how to start." I watched this with firefighters too, not just Marie. I had a man named Doug Harrington who came to my bay every week for a year.
He knew he needed to apologize to his son. He could articulate exactly why. He could name the moment everything turned. He could predict what would happen if he did not act. And every Monday he came back and told me he had not called. And I would ask him why, and he would say, "I know, Ray, I know." He knew. Knowing was not the problem. The problem was that knowing feels like progress. It feels like you have done something. You read a book. You understand a dynamic. You feel like you have moved. But you have not moved. You have just understood. And understanding without action is the most elegant form of cowardice I have ever seen. Doug eventually called his son, not because he learned anything new, because one day he was lonely enough to do what he had known he should do for a year. Loneliness beats insight every time. Marie came back to us at 52, not because she learned a new framework, because one morning she woke up and realized she had been explaining her pain for 2 decades and hadn't felt anything in years. She drove to our house unannounced. She stood in our kitchen and cried. She has been back for 8 years. She brings her grandchildren now. She asks about my hands, which ache, and brings me lotion that smells like Eleanor's tea. And if you asked her what brought her back, she would not say boundaries or inner child work or radical acceptance. She would say, "I got tired of being right." I'm going to tell you my age now because I think it matters for what I'm about to say. I am 87 years old. I was born in 1938 in Southbridge, Massachusetts. My father fixed looms in a textile mill. My mother kept boarders. I was the first person in my family to finish high school. I stood in a fire station bay for 44 years, and I paid attention. That's mostly what I did. I paid attention. And after all of that, after 800 firefighters and 41 years of marriage and 3 children and 5 grandchildren and a life that has been ordinary in the best possible way, here's what I know. Life cannot be optimized. It cannot be systematized. It probably cannot be improved at all. But it can be inhabited, and the inhabiting of it is the meaning of it. You don't figure out your life and then go live it. You live it, and the figuring out happens along the way, usually when you're not trying to figure anything out, usually on a morning, usually over tea. So here is what I want you to do, not someday, now. Close this book. Go find something that needs fixing, not to apply a principle or test a system, just to fix it. Use your hands. Notice the resistance of the material, the way the problem reveals itself only when you are touching it. That's what work is, not the explanation of it, the thing itself. And I think that's what bothers me most about these books, if I'm being honest. Not that they are wrong. They are not wrong. It's that they give people the impression that life is a project to be managed, that if you just get the right routines and the right mindset, you'll unlock the achievement. But life is not an achievement. It is a morning with tea. It is a 52-year-old daughter crying in a kitchen. It is a man named Tom who fixes tractors and has never once needed to know what a purpose compass is. It is a socket wrench in a drawer that some firefighter needed more than any theory I could have offered. Life is stubbornly, beautifully resistant to optimization, and the people who live it best are not the ones who systematize it most. They are the ones who show up for it most. I kept a drawer of candy in my bay for 44 years. Every firefighter who came in took a piece. Some days that candy was the only sweetness in their entire shift. And I think about that a lot, how sometimes the smallest, most ordinary gesture is the one that keeps someone going. You don't need a 247-page book. You need a socket wrench. You need a morning. You need to be useful. Now go do that. I'll be here if you need me. I have always been here.